My friends, hello. A number of years ago, I remember being in a room with a bunch of my colleagues. I was going through a coach skills training. It was essentially to grow as a coach to get even stronger and better. And we did this every couple of years to strengthen our skills. That we would get together for a weekend, and there'd be a bunch of us who would all get together from all over the state or the country, and come to actually even from Canada, and come together to grow our skills. And I had this gentleman who was with me. He'd been a friend for a while, and he was about 35 years older than me. He had been a coach for about that long. And so he was really, really a veteran of the craft. And I had respect for him. And it was neat because this was a day that he shared with me the respect he had for me. It was really pretty neat experience. So I'm standing in the front of the room and I'm talking about conflict. Conflict is something that I'm passionate about. It's my first graduate degree is in conflict management. I really believe that conflict is a force for good. And I was sharing that from the front of the room. I was talking about how conflict isn't a negative thing like we talk about in Western society, but rather it's a catalyst for growth. And this guy, I could see him sitting in the audience, and his mind was just blown. He was just dumbfounded as I'm going through my thing, and if I were actually coaching live participants, I would have handled it. I would have worked with him and inquired, and for the sake of all, would have gone deeper into making sure that no one was confused, like he looked like he was. And but for this exercise, that wasn't necessary, so I just kept going. He comes up to me at the lunch break, and he's like, "I can't stop thinking about what you said." He said, you're talking about conflict being a good thing, and I have never believed that. He said, and I started thinking about conflict in my career and how, as a salesperson, I've intentionally avoided conflict throughout my whole career. And now I'm thinking, maybe if I had thought of conflict as a positive thing instead of a negative thing, it may have actually helped me to be a better salesperson. What's remarkable is he actually did change his behavior as a result of this conversation, and he had some of the best sales years of his career until he retired. It was just absolutely phenomenal. Conflict isn't a negative thing. Conflict actually gives us an opportunity to grow. Think of a butterfly, a caterpillar rather. Think of a caterpillar. Caterpillar goes into its cocoon, it does its little thing, and its chrysalis, and then it comes out, but the process of coming out is super painful. It's got to squeeze its way through a tiny little hole. And until it does that, it can't become a butterfly. What's interesting is what's actually happening biologically and anatomically while this is happening. Fluid is being forced through the body into different cavities and so forth, so that this caterpillar can actually have structure in its wings. As it's going through the chrysalis, the fluid in its body moves around in such a way that it can become the butterfly. Conflict allows us to grow into our next form as well. Now, you may be thinking, I went through serious conflict, I was divorced, or I have a family member who was divorced, and conflict is a horrible thing, and I want nothing to do with it, and I'm going to avoid it. That's fair. And let's think about that relationship. If a relationship ends in divorce, it means that it wasn't healthy. Now, it may have started healthy, and one of the two individuals or both may have grown and transformed into different individuals than they were when it started. Or maybe the relationship should have never existed in the first place. We got to look honestly at these things. Regardless, if a relationship goes to divorce, that means it's unhealthy and that the individuals are unhappy. And while the process of divorce can be very ugly and painful, those individuals are likely far better off as a result of being separated from one another. And if this is true for you, I'm going to suggest that look honestly at this. Did you feel better after your divorce than you did in that relationship going through all that pain and struggle? And the answer for everyone I've ever worked with has been yes. That even though that experience sucks, coming out of it afterwards is healthy. Conflict is not a bad thing. It may be painful, it may be frustrating, it may be uncomfortable. Certainly, I'm not going to disagree with that at all. Those are all fair assessments. But the experience of conflict allows us to grow, like that caterpillar, into the butterfly. When we avoid it, what we're actually doing is we're harming ourselves. We're keeping ourselves stagnant. We're not allowing ourselves to spread our wings and fly and to become the best version of ourselves that we can be. When we change how we think about conflict, we can change how we go into the experience, and therefore we can change how we come out of the experience, being even more productive than it otherwise would be. The next time you're faced with something challenging and difficult, be it working with a colleague or your supervisor or your partner, whoever it may be, think about this conflict as, okay, this is going to be a little bit uncomfortable, it's going to be a little bit painful, I get that, sure, fine, whatever. And I'm going to be better when this is over. And if you think about it that way, man, I tell you what, it's going to transform how that conversation goes in the first place, which will actually make it more healthy. But then it's also going to transform the experiences you have anytime you're faced with conflict.